Greetings, my beloved clients and friends. So I wanted to do a few videos because it's been a year since we set up our RIA, and I just wanted to go over some of our core principles. But first, I want to cover six investment theses that we hold, that we talk about a lot in the office, and that we think about and that influence our investment decisions. Okay, so the first one is software eats the world. And we didn't come up with that. That was from a speech that Mark Andreessen gave in 2014. And he's a prominent venture capitalist, partner at Andreessen Horowitz, one of the largest venture capital firms out of Silicon Valley. Incredibly successful. And he noticed that software eats the world, and software companies have a durable competitive advantage. I've talked about it before, in that there's large startup costs and then low continuing costs. So you come up with a software thing, and it's hard to do the research and development to come up with it. But once you have it, and it's something that people could go online and subscribe to, you could add 100 customers as easy as you could add 100 million customers. And so compared to a capital intensive business, it's just I could say a better business model. So kind of like when Warren Buffett saw Geico Insurance, and he took a deep dive into it. In the early 50s, he looked at this company, and he realized that they had a durable competitive advantage, in that most insurance companies, to sell their policy, they had this massive sales force of insurance agents that would go door to door or call or be involved in the community, and that's how they would get their business. And that was expensive compared to Geico, who was a direct-to-consumer model. So they would send out something in the mail and people would reply back, and that's how they would get insurance. So they did not have that massive cost of the sales force, which was a little over 10% of their cost structure. So he said, how are the other insurance companies going to compete against Geico, that it's 10% cheaper for them to do the same thing? And he goes, that's a durable competitive advantage. And almost 70 years later, it still is a competitive advantage for them. And Geico has been, if not his number one investment of all time, it's one of the things that made him one of the wealthiest men in the world, one of his top handful of investments in his amazing investment career. So software companies have that similar durable competitive advantage in their cost structure. So we look for those type of companies like Microsoft, Adobe, Salesforce, right? Those are software companies that they're eating the world, and these new ones coming up, and we're looking for them. So that's one thing we talk about in the office. Software eats the world. Number two, AI eats software. And I wouldn't come up with that. I saw that in an article, like I think 2019. And AI, meaning artificial intelligence, it's amazing. And basically that's what drives Google, and to a degree Amazon. It's the computer thinking and determining what you're searching for. And that's one application, but there are many applications to artificial intelligence. And why does it eat software? Well, so for example, programmers have been able to program a computer using software to beat the best chess players in the world, right? But there's this other game called Go, which is popular in Asia, and it's infinitely more complex. Well, not infinitely, but magnitudes more complex than chess. Kind of like if you compare checkers to chess, you can compare Go to chess. And to come up with a software, because there's so many different moves, to tell the computer, when you see this, do that, it's just too big, right? So here's how AI works. Instead of telling the computer what to do in every situation, what programmers did is they gave the AI the rules of the game, and the computer just learned how to play. And how did they learn? The way people learn, by playing, right? If you wanted to be good at Go, you just play and play and play, and then as you go, you get more experience. You remember, oh, this didn't work last time, and you start challenging yourself with better players, and as you play and play, you get better, right? Well, guess what? A computer could do the same thing. You just teach them the rules, and they could play and play and play. But guess what? They don't get tired, right? You could play maybe 3 games a day, and then you get tired. You got to eat. You got to do something else. You got to sleep. A computer doesn't have to do those things. They could play much faster. They could play many more games. And when you play, you don't remember every single move you made and every single move the other person made, and every position on the board. But the computer does. So what the computer did is it learned very quickly how to play the game, and in a very short period of time, it was beating the best players in the world. And so how can we compete against a computer that learns faster than us and remembers more than we do and doesn't get tired and can keep, doing whatever, searching and reading and studying 24/7 to learn, and it remembers everything it learns? That's AI. AI eats the world. So Palantir is in the portfolio because it's an AI company. Google is an AI company. So we have those type of companies in the portfolio. The third thing that we talk about after software eats the world, AI eats software, battery eats ice. That's what we say. So the ICE, the internal combustion engine, was a invention of over 100 years ago, and it's improved some, but it's kind of leveled off, the improvement of that internal combustion engine is kind of plateauing, right? But battery is a much more efficient way, right? You could talk to a mechanic, and I'll give you one example. A company we have in the portfolio called Proterra, which makes electric vehicles and batteries for electric vehicles in the commercial vehicle space, particularly buses, right? They learned to make batteries from Tesla, and it's a great business because the government is mandating and giving money to municipalities and airports and school districts, and to change out their fleet of buses from diesel to battery, right? And here's one of the problems why they don't get more orders. One of the problems is if they were to put in an order to, let's say, a city for all their buses to go electric. Well, those diesel buses currently sit overnight in some kind of motor pool, and there's probably 50 mechanics that work in that motor pool to keep those buses on the road. Well, guess what? If they went to all electric, they need maybe 5 mechanics. What are they going to do with those other 45? Oh, and by the way, those other 45 mechanics, they have a government job. They probably have a union, right? How are they going to get rid of them? Where are they going to put them, right? So that's an issue, and some municipalities. I was talking to the chief operating officer there at Proterra. He said, even though they have the money from the government to buy these buses, and it would save them money because they won't have to on maintenance and fuel, they're hesitant to pull the trigger because they don't want the nightmare that comes with, what are we going to do with these 45 out of work mechanics? Okay, that's how much more efficient battery is than internal combustion engine. So that's the third thing we look at. That's why we invest and Proterra and Tesla and Archimoto. Battery eats ice. Okay, software eats the world, AI eats software, battery eats ice. The other thing we say is solar eats fossil. Right? Fossil fuels. It's such an interesting thing. The way we get our energy. Right? Here's how we get our energy. The sun shines upon the earth, and the plants are able to convert the energy of the sun into energy, into life, really. And that's where they get their energy, from the sun through photosynthesis. And then herbivores eat the plants for energy. Carnivores eat the herbivores for energy. And then they all die over time. And over time, sediment covers them over thousands and thousands of years in the bottom of the ocean or in some valley of death, right? And then we come back thousands or millions of years later and extract that energy in the form of petroleum out of the ground. What an inefficient way to get energy, right? The sun to plants to herbivores to carnivores to sediment to millions of years. Why don't we just burn the trees? Wouldn't that be faster? Right? Wouldn't that be more efficient? Avoid all those other steps? Or why don't we do what the trees do, and that power plant in the sky that God gave us, why don't we just get the energy directly from there? Right? That's what's been powering the world since the beginning. Why not use that? So we think just solar is a superior form of energy. The challenge is, how do you capture that solar power? And that's a technology question, and I believe over time that technology will find answers to do that better. Like right now, you go out towards Vegas and there's these big solar farms, and maybe 10 acres of a solar farm delivers X amount of energy. Well, I believe that over time, technology will show those people how to get that same amount of energy from 5 acres, and then maybe from 1 acre, and then maybe from 1 rooftop, and then maybe from 1 car rooftop, and then maybe from the top of my ball cap, right? Because that's how, so technology advances. So as we develop more efficient ways to capture and store that solar energy, it's going to become a more compelling form of energy. So we think about that in our investments. That's why we invested in Tesla. Not the only reason, but one. So software eats the world. AI eats software. Battery eats ice. Fossil eats solar eats fossil. Oh, one other thing about solar energy versus fossil fuels. Guess what there is not in space? Dinosaurs. There's no dinosaurs in space. So where are we going to get fossil fuels from? Right? But guess what there is in space? Solar power. Right? It's a solar system. It revolves around the sun. So there's plenty of solar power in the solar system, not just on Earth. So as we explore that option, solar is going to be the way to go. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is, let me skip the fifth one because I forgot. The sixth one is millennials are taking over. And they just are. The baby boomers were getting long in the tooth anyway. I just read this article this week that they're all wanting to retire if they're not already retired. I won't say they're all wanting to retire, but there's a tendency for the baby boomers to be ready to retire, even if it's a little bit early. And so they were kind of passing the torch anyway. But when COVID hit, the torch was yanked out of their hand. And here's why. The same exact things they made fun of the millennials for. Right? You're always in your room. You never leave the house. You're always on your phone. You're always playing video games, right? Guess what? When COVID hit and they said, hey, you can't leave your house, you can't go shopping, you're gonna have to do everything online, on the phone, you're gonna have to work from home. Millennials were like, fine, that's what they've been doing their whole life anyway, right? And the boomers really struggled with that. I can't leave my house, I can't go shopping, I don't know how to use this thing. And they really just, so this post-COVID world was ideally suited for the millennials. And we think about that, and the companies that we're looking at, it's amazing. Some of these up and coming companies, they're run by millennials, and they think so differently. And boomers were like programmed for 6 to 8% growth, and millennials are like, they're very comfortable with 10% monthly growth and stuff like that, because they're digitally native and they think differently. And that's what generations do. They, in their early part of their life, like in their 20s and 30s, they want to set out to change the world, make it different, and make it in their own image, right? And that's what the boomers did too in the 60s and 70s, right? Civil rights movements, and they wanted to change the way things are done, and they wanted to have drugs, and they wanted to have a different approach to sexual relations, and they wanted to, they weren't big on this war, and so they had ideas of how they wanted to change the world. And then once you get into your 40s and 50s and the world has changed and you get comfortable with it, and then you're like, no, what? I like the new world that I made. I want to keep it the same. So innovation kind of tapers off, right? And you want to just keep the things the way you made it. Well, now it's the millennials' time, and they're wanting to change the world in their way, the same way the boomers did. And they want to change work and family and where people live. Maybe they're not so much into the suburbs, and they have different opinions about how they want to work and do things and shop, right? They don't necessarily need to go to the mall. They could do it all on their phone, and so the world is changing to the way the millennials are, and we gotta keep our eyes open to that, and so we invest with that thought in mind. So those are some of the big thoughts. Software eats the world. AI eats software. Battery eats ice. Solar eats fossil. And millennials are taking over. Oh, one more. Virtual eats actual. Right? People work virtually. They work from home. You shop virtually. There's this thing called the metaverse. That more and more things are going to be done virtually versus actually. Amazon was a big beneficiary of shopping virtually instead of actually going and see. And that's what people used to say at first, like, how am I going to buy shoes online? I got to try them on first, right? Guess what? They're selling plenty of shoes online, and they solved those problems. So those are our big six. And if you look at some of our investments, and you'll see that those theses are reflected in those companies. And we think those are long-term trends that we could benefit from. I'll just say them one last time. Software eats the world. AI eats software. Battery eats ice. Solar eats fossil. Virtual eats actual. And millennials are taking over. So hope that gives you some insight into how we think about strategically building our investment portfolio, and hope you guys have a great day.